Um, Thank you. From Insight Consulting and Dan Varna from EWI and Buffalo Manufacturing Works. And you will get a full introduction from them on their background because I will not do it justice. So just want to quick set the stage for today before we get into why we are all here to hear from our panelists. So Zach, if you don't mind advancing the slide. As I mentioned, I'm Danielle and I'm a project manager with Launch New York. I won't bore you with my background. I'll share a little bit more though about Launch New York and the work that they do. So Launch New York is a nonprofit venture development organization providing one-on-one pro bono mentoring across upstate New York. And that looks like from Albany all the way to Buffalo and everywhere in between. To date, they have mentored over 1,900 companies, so knocking on that 2,000, and created nearly 10,000 jobs. In addition to the work that they do mentoring, they also provide early stage startup capital through a multitude of venture funds here locally. And sort of, if you can get an idea of where we fit in the ecosystem, Launch New York is on the earliest side from that pre-seed to seed, helping companies really take their company from idea all the way to in market and then growth stage. We have invested in over 115 companies to date. That number changes by the day. It's hard to keep up. And we are excited about all the growth, and including a lot of advanced manufacturing and companies who've been able to participate in Shift 2.0. And then here, I just want to sort of show how Launch New York really works. So we support scalable startups from that earliest with mentoring one-on-one that is provided free through a network of experts and our entrepreneurs in residence. And then companies work with us all the way through funding and then hopefully growth and company exit. And then we work with our partners throughout the ecosystem, including Insight Consulting and Buffalo Manufacturing Works. And before I pass over to Allison from the Shift 2.0 team, Launch New York provides support for financing for projects in this. So this is how we fit into the ecosystem for advanced manufacturers. So Allison, I will let you introduce Shift 2.0.
Great. Thanks, Danielle. And we appreciate having Launch New York as a strategic partner. I'm Allison Kupferman, part of the Shift 2.0 team. Next slide. A Shift 2.0 is a no-cost program that's specifically designed for the small to medium-sized manufacturers, which is those having less than 500 employees that are located in the 5 counties of Western New York. And Shift provides many resources to help position area manufacturers for success and for growth. One of the ways that we do this is through networking and peer learning. Our Shift 2.0 peer group, which as you can see here was recently featured in the Buffalo News. These are confidential professional problem-solving sessions led by Ben Rand of Insight Consulting, who you will hear from today. These involve tours of other manufacturers, networking sessions, and troubleshooting issues on their manufacturing floors. We do have another meeting coming up next Tuesday. So if you are a small to medium-sized manufacturer on the call today and you're interested in joining us, please feel free to reach out to me. Next slide. Upskilling the workforce is obviously very crucial to what we do. So to that end, Shift also offers hands-on training classes to provide experience with both industrial and collaborative robots. And our next and final class will be April 21st to the 23rd, and it will be on site at our facility in Buffalo. Next slide. Lastly, along with larger automation projects, which we've implemented, Shift also has robotic loaner cells available for tasks such as machine tending, grinding, polishing. Area companies can really try before you buy. So these are a really great way to dabble with new technology and take it for a test drive on your manufacturing floor before deciding to invest in the technology. We've helped companies such as Cook Metal Spinning and Power Drives Inc. that you see pictured here. Next slide. So if you're interested in registering for the peer group or robotics class or want to learn a little bit more about the Shift Loaner Cell program, please feel free to reach out to me at my contact information here. And without further ado, I will pass it over to Marnie to introduce our esteemed panelists.
Thanks so much, Allison. It's a real pleasure just being with this group that can really bring to light some of the issues that are so important for our manufacturers in Western New York and beyond, which obviously is a really important sector for us. So I'm thrilled to be joined by Akua, Ben, and Dan. And to kick us off today, would be really pleased if they could each walk you through their background and sort of the what about their background will bring their insights really into the realm of manufacturing. So let's kick off with Akua.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Ekua Menzedu, president of Clementine Gold Group, and we support organizations to build workplace cultures that really people want to be a part of. And that's especially related to how the workforce is evolving and how the time is evolving as well. So we spend a lot of time with leaders to think about how culture, purpose, and leadership really shows up in the workplace and the day-to-day experience of their employees. And that includes Gen Z and beyond. And so looking forward to sharing some insights today. We work with a lot of organizations across Western New York and have a lot to share.
Thanks so much, Akua. All right, Ben, over to you.
Thanks for joining us today, everybody. My name's Ben Rand. I'm the president at Insight Consulting. Insight was founded way back in 1982 to help small manufacturers succeed in Western New York, try and keep their jobs and their economic impact here. We do that by delivering a wide range of management consulting services, everything from process improvement to cybersecurity to workforce solutions. So I'm excited to be here today to share some thoughts.
Thanks so much. All right, Dan.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Vrana. I'm the engineering group lead for the automation team here at EWI, locally known as Buffalo Manufacturing Works. So leading a team of between 4 and 5 engineers over here at our Buffalo-based site on the program that Allison was speaking about, which is the Shift 2.0 program. So we've been working quite a bit with the workforce here locally, both from a training perspective, again, as Allison mentioned, but also from technology implementation. So understanding how companies need to hire from either within or externally to support new technologies that are being brought into manufacturing. Before Buffalo Manufacturing Works, I was at the University of Buffalo for 7 years, where I was teaching anywhere from freshman level all the way through graduate seminars and design studios. So participating in sort of the front end of workforce development and generation and talent identification. Happy to be here and excited to talk through the topic today.
Terrific. What a great panel. And I think we all can relate to the fact that we've been looking at the manufacturing sector as one that is so critical, particularly now post-COVID, knowing that we need to have that happening here in the US and in our own communities. At the same time, we know that the graying of the workforce has meant we need new talent. So making manufacturing attractive, particularly to younger generations, has certainly been a topic of conversation that everybody's wrestling with. So Akua, I would love to start with you. If we could talk about how do you think organizations should think about their talent brand, if you will, in order to appeal not only to the younger generations, but also to keep that balance with the fact that you really want to make sure you don't alienate your existing employee base as well.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Marnie. I honestly think that culture evolution doesn't mean that you have to erase culture, right? And so it's not about choosing Gen Z over your current workforce, but it's really about translating those values into today's language. When companies focus on things like transparency, skill building, and respect, everyone ultimately benefits. But I think one of the mistakes is thinking that you have to go to social media to try to attract this younger generation and focusing on that as your brand. It's really about what you're promising to your employees and making sure that you're keeping that regardless of the generation. So honing in on that language and connecting to them in a way that they understand is ultimately how you make sure that progresses without alienating other generations as well.
And I'm wondering, Dan, if you want to comment as well, would love to hear about, what you think differentiates Gen Z's expectations from millennials, for example. And, when it comes to work, the culture, career progression, what is it that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think flexibility is one that we focus on a lot. I think flexibility is no longer a want, but it's sort of a need in the way that you're pitching jobs to a younger generation. I think it's very evident in younger generations in entering the workforce when things you use the phrase that could have been an email, and sort of the sort of they can see through it if we're doing things that don't need to be done in person or can be done asynchronously or can be done in different environments. So I think really working through what flexibility means to you and your company. Obviously, in manufacturing, that can be a very different thing for different companies. Sometimes that means flexibility in where you can work. Sometimes that means flexibility in when you can work. Sometimes that means extending shifts so that you're giving more time off on Fridays or something like that. So I think it really depends on the actual environment that you're in, what that flexibility can be defined as. I think communication and accessibility are big across the organization. So it's not just communication with your direct report, but all the way up through the higher levels of the organization, transparency in those communications as well, and the ability to access people at sort of all levels of the company. And then I think rapid career progression is one that we're seeing a lot, or the want for it. So and the ability to accommodate those things. I think we're seeing a younger workforce that's more able than ever. So the rapid career progression actually makes quite a bit of sense. It's not just rapid career progression for the sake of it. It's the ability and the raw skills that the newer generation is bringing to the workforce that I think makes that a really a pertinent subject to make sure we take into account.
And I think I might have you jump in as well, because I know obviously you've been involved with so many different companies, and I'm curious if you can speak to how you're seeing these, historically traditional businesses, if you will, particularly with some of the workforce that's still doing that good hard work on site every day. Any specifics you've seen in terms of how they're handling policy? Some of what Dan talked about, flexibility and shorter Fridays, whatever. Any specifics or other reflections you could add here?
I certainly agree with the points that have already been made. I think that's true, and we are seeing it. And even though many of these companies are old, some of them, as you know, Marnie, have been in place for over a century here in Western New York, but that doesn't mean that their workforce is. So they are turning over and getting younger as we go. But one thing that I would call out that I think plays a role here is that most younger workers are looking for meaning in their jobs, and we're encouraging companies to define their role. What is it that you're contributing and bringing to the world, or at least to the local community, and how do you help people understand how they're part of that? If I could share an anecdote, we have one client who is a functional printer. Excuse me. And part of their product offering is medical products. And people knew that they were printers and they described themselves as printers. But the company started bringing in end users of some of those medical products, individuals who had benefited, maybe even had their lives saved as a result of that medical product. And it was transformative for the company and for the workforce's opinion of their own role in the company. They went from being people who are printers to people who save lives. And it made a big difference in the way they looked at the world and approached their job. So I think, our advice for companies is to look for that meaning and share that with your team and also with folks who you want to recruit to the business.
Yeah, I think that's a really great anecdotal point, because it brings up sort of the culture and the language around the company. So, I'm wondering, would love to have each of you talk a bit about how company culture plays a role as you're looking to retain your current talent, but attract that new talent.
Yeah, certainly in the past, older operators have thought about, salary and benefits as being the key. And those things are still important, but now that's just a qualifier to be in the game. I think really culture and that feeling that your workers have about coming into work and interacting with their peers makes a huge difference in terms of your ability to attract and retain the talent that you want in the business. Even more so than, the business's strategy. There's an old saying that, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And when it comes to workforce, I think that's especially true.
Great. Akua, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think there are questions that you need to be asking in terms of how people are experiencing that culture on a regular basis. So it's not just a perk to Ben's point. So we're not just looking at salary and benefits, but essentially, how do you assess culture honestly? Are you asking, will I be respected? Will my opinion matter when I contribute to a conversation? How will I grow? I think Gen Z is looking for that answer up front, in terms of how you can upskill them in their work. Will I belong? Can I really come and show my best self? And so I think, generally we look at retention by your role, your tenure, but we need to look at like employee satisfaction as well across those demographics. So really enforcing the respect level, the opportunity to grow is going to go a long way for organizations.
Great.
Yeah,
Dan?
totally agree with everything that's been said already. I think one of the things that we face on a day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year basis is sort of the push and pull of what culture becomes over time because of the people that you're bringing into the office. So not just treating culture as a sort of blanket identity that you're mapping onto a set of people that's ever changing, but really listening and understanding how that culture needs to change to fit not even a new workforce, but just an ever-changing group of people that are going to be within your company. I mean, we experience this day to day. We have two sites, one in Columbus and one in Buffalo, and we have the same high-level understanding of sort of what we want company culture to look like. But if you walk into our Buffalo office versus our Columbus office, you get a very different look and feel to how that culture is actually playing out day to day because of the people that are on those floors and actually enacting the culture. So I think for people coming into a workforce, and it's not just Gen Z, it's really anyone coming into a new job, I think they want to understand how they're going to become a part of that culture, but how that culture also has, again, flexibility over time to change to accommodate the things that they want to see change within a company as well.
So I'm interested to hear a bit about how you take all the dynamics we just talked about and how that affects perhaps even your interviewing process, your recruitment process overall, perhaps. Just curious if you have any tips or even just reflections on what you're seeing and maybe what some of our attendees today can really be looking for.
I can start out. I think we spend a lot of our interviews, our interviews are incredibly long. And I think there's a bunch of us on the call here who went through the process here within EWI, and they're very long, but I think we spend on the hiring side, we spend a lot of time listening to what people actually want out of the job and trying to read between the lines. And we're not asking, we ask questions about technical skills, but we're more looking for those soft skills. Is this person a right fit for our company? The technical nitty gritty, I mean, we can teach that. We can't teach people how to be a part of the workforce that we're trying to build here. So we spend a lot of time listening in those, and I think we found best success when we just hire darn good people, and sort of the skills can sort of follow that. And we look for people who want to be there long term, who want the same types of things that we want. And I think we've been pretty successful in building a strong team here that reflects some of those values as well.
And I'll ask each of you as you answer any showstoppers that if you hear it, not going to be someone you might be thinking about, or any questions that you absolutely want to ask everybody to get at some of these issues.
I think in our environment, it has to be a willingness to learn. I think it's sort of a red flag when we have a lot of really, really smart people that come in for interviews. But I mean, admitting that you don't know everything, no matter what level you're at, I think is something really important that we look for, because we want people to grow. We don't want people to be stagnant within our workforce. So we want we really look for that willingness to grow and to learn and to listen to others. I think is one of the big ones. I mean, again, really smart people. So there's always a little bit of a balance of I mean, it's pretty rare. We have a pretty rigorous process of boxes that we need to check, and no one ever checks all the boxes, and that's totally okay. We do that on purpose, but we then evaluate those positive qualities against some of the things and make sure that they're going to be able to work in a collaborative environment and work with the team well.
So Dan, it sounds like you're not looking for individual contributors. You're really looking for someone who brings something to the table, but will do that in a team environment.
Yeah, and I mean we're in an R&D environment where I think we need that kind of communication, but I think that's a quality I think that's been emphasized. That I mean I taught quite a few students over the course of my time at UB, and that was I think one of the things that companies were always looking for was that ability to work as part of a team. I mean, obviously there's things that you're going to individually contribute that are really important to the sort of stock value that you bring immediately to the team, and there's going to be gaps that you can fill. But if you're not capable of sort of portraying those traits or those skills in a way that helps the rest of the team, then I think there's a loss of value there a little bit.
Mhm.
I would second a lot of the points that Dan's made, in particular, this idea of sort of hiring for attitude and training for skills. More and more companies have moved in that direction as workforce situations have tightened up. And I hear many manufacturers saying, give me somebody who's ready to come to work, who's reliable, who's enthusiastic, and we'll take care of the technical side. And maybe again, I can share an anecdote. This is my stock and trade, Marnie. But there was a very tight tolerance, high performance machining shop down in Chautauqua that had all the same workforce challenges a lot of folks did. They typically invest in very high end equipment, often out of Europe. They had one particular item that was a multi-million-dollar machine, gave incredible feedback, et cetera, et cetera. And the person that they had running that was their best machinist. But when they hired that person, the previous job that they had was with, wait for it, Disney on Ice. They were literally a skater. But in the recruiting process, they were able to look past that background, to those core traits and that attitude, and that person turned into their best machinist. So if you were just looking at what their CNC capabilities were, you never would have hired them, maybe not even interviewed them.
Fascinating. I love the open mind being not just the interviewee, but the interviewers.
Very, very creative in that score. And that extends to other aspects of the business as well. This particular company also had a large contingent of women who were working on the shop floor, which even in this day and age is still sometimes unusual.
Mhm.
And they were able to achieve that in part because they had a core group of women in the company, and they recognized that when they brought in somebody new, it's kind of like that first day of middle school. Who am I going to sit with at lunch? Who am I going to talk to? Who's going to get me? And if there's nobody in the shop that looks like you, that's a pretty tough transition. But in this case, they made a special effort to basically have mentors available, and they ultimately were able to be very successful in hiring women to the business, and obviously some of their best workers.
So that extra effort to help and any of the new employees feel that connectedness sounds like it's really a critical piece as well.
And really putting yourself in their shoes and having that sensitivity to the kind of challenges that they're going to have to overcome to become a successful part of your business.
Great. Akua, would love to hear from you on this one.
Yeah, I think, one of the things, and I'm a former chief people officer, so we always look for these specific skill sets. We would often hire from places like Starbucks where folks just had really great customer service and those type of communication skills. I know a lot of conversation around Gen Z has been around how do they communicate and how best to communicate with them. And so a lot of the interview processes that we would go through would be around behavioral interview questions. So putting specific scenarios in front of them and asking them to kind of talk through what their approach would look like. And we would see the best of the candidates be able to kind of answer through those and, really play that out in front of you. So a lot of the skill sets, and Dan and Ben both mentioned looking for those soft skill sets were really important because we know that once you had that skill set, you could teach and train on the technical side. So definitely agree with them on that.
So let's dive a little bit more into the technical side. So I appreciate, the soft skills discussion. We know ultimately that's critical, but there must be some amount of technical expertise or something, even if I've been a skater before, somehow that you're assessing skill sets. So would love to have each of you talk a bit about what skills you think people should consider getting in place before they're walking into that interview? And that, again, technical side. Dan, how about you go
Yeah,
first? Because I'm
yeah,
guessing
sure.
your R&D, you've got some very particular needs there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we look for again back to some of the soft skills, but I mean, it's a willingness to learn, it's an attention to detail. I mean, there's these things that that you can't teach, but on the sort of teachable side, or what do we want to see from a skill side? I mean, I think there's a variety of ways it plays out, but the ability to think critically, again, I think that's one of these soft skills, but it plays out through sort of technical examples in a lot of ways. So, I mean, sometimes that comes in as someone who's really skilled in programming. Sometimes that comes in who's someone who's really good at drawing or 3D design or mechanical design or electrical or whatever it may be. But the ability to sort of show those other soft qualities through some of the more hard sort of learned behaviors or learned skills that you've had. I mean, we do look for experience with robotics or experience with automation related technologies but I think one thing that we're good at is sort of reading between the lines of what those skills actually mean and how those play out in a real world scenario. Because a lot of people can write on a resume, I have X, Y, and Z skills, and we sort of look at the sum of all those skills and what do those mean as sort of a whole package? What does that add to the value that we're trying to bring into the company? So I know it's a little bit of a vague answer to to just say I don't think there's any one skill that we're looking for, but I think younger generations, I mean, it's Gen Z, but it's also beyond, are coming in with a lot more programming experience, a lot more technical experience than ever before. I mean, access to low level block style programming is happening in elementary schools. I mean, toys that you're seeing in Target are now towards programming, even if they're really lightweight versions of those. So I think we see a lot more technical skill coming into the workforce. I think what we look for also is the ability to map that pure technical skill onto a manufacturing environment. So I think we had the comment one time that we have a lot more CNC programmers than we do CNC machinists at this point, because we have a lot of people who are really good on the computer side now, but they don't have that sort of learned or years of experience in actually machining. So the ability to map that from a digital environment to a hands-on environment is one that I think we look really critically at, because I think we not so much just need someone who's going to be on the computer all day, but we need someone who's going to bridge that gap between that computer and the actual manufacturing process.
And Dan, do you actually have them do any hands-on exercises as part of the interview process?
For the automation team, we don't, but for our data science team that's also based out of Buffalo here, we do have a programming exercise that we have them run through. And again, it's meant to be a little bit more vague. It's meant to be more of a thinking process. So it's not asking to code Python or asking to code C. It's really just about, hey, if you had this problem and you need to make a family that's going to respond to X, Y, and Z variables, how would you sort of start to approach that from a high level? So it's almost more like a thinking test than a process test. Because again, I can teach you where the parentheses need to go or where the periods need to go in order to make something work. But having that sort of logic-based testing, I think, is something that we look at quite a bit.
And how about minimum level of education?
Typically, we're looking for bachelors at typically in engineering or related fields. But I think we do have examples. We have really, really high skilled technicians that work here that are associate's degrees. Sometimes they're trade school degrees. Sometimes they're just dozens and dozens of years of experience. So for certain career paths, I think we're looking for bachelors. For certain career paths, we're looking for PhDs. For certain career paths, we're just looking for people that sort of fit the bill of what we need at the time and the place, and think that can grow into the company. So I would say for our team specifically, we're in the bachelor's, but I think two of our engineers have PhDs. We have a couple of masters, and so it's sort of across the board looks a little bit different person to person.
Great. So Ben, just wondering, what skills are you seeing is the most critical for Gen Z who want to enter manufacturing?
Well, I think, to piggyback on Dan, anybody who showed up with a resume with extensive CNC machining experience would instantly get hired. I think the challenge these days with the workforce constraints we have is that you rarely see the exact talent you're looking for coming across your desk in that resume. And what we would encourage companies to do is to think about, call them adjacent skill sets that might give you an indication of what they could bring to your organization. Manufacturers, for instance, have known for years that folks who are mechanically inclined, whether that's, farm kids who've been fixing tractors to urbanites who have, an old car that they keep running, but that hands-on mechanical aptitude and interest translates well into a lot of manufacturing environments. So, you may not be a Disney on Ice skater, but there could be other skills you're going to bring to the party, even if you can't demonstrate, 10 years worth of machining experience. And I think I would encourage manufacturers to think about what like skill sets would lend themselves to success in their environment and to look for those as well as they go through the hiring process.
And maybe to shift gears a little bit, Akua, just wondering about about manufacturers and employers partnering with education institutions, training programs, apprenticeship opportunities. What are you seeing as what would be good to do and what might be available?
Yeah, I know there's many organizations. I think about like UB's EOC and what they're doing in terms of upskilling. There's things like, digital awareness and understanding, how you interpret some basic data that might come in front of you to make more data-informed decisions. We're seeing a lot of conversations around, AI is like all of the rage right now. And so what is the human connection to automation, right? Not to say that, AI is going to take over every specific role, but how do you work with it in order to move that forward? And so there's a lot of conversations in terms of adjacent institutions and organizations that are assisting with that. Systems thinking is a big one that comes to mind as well. So how does your individual role play a part in the larger coordination of the system as well? So these are all sorts of things that we're seeing kind of come to the forefront. And there's organizations like that are looking at skill pathways in these specific areas that can assist folks in terms of getting in manufacturing in these roles.
I think
And go ahead.
We have quite a few friends on the call that I think this topic's pretty applicable to. So I see Dan you said on that I know was really a key part of some of the work that was going on with Niagara Falls High School, partnering with local manufacturers here in the area. So I think that was the Transit Authority. We heard of a couple of others as well that were part of that program that give high school students access to sort of a day of shadowing or even just a day of presentation as to what they can expect in the manufacturing world. I think Ellen and Cindy on related to STEM Wars and Dream It, Do It that are partnering with local manufacturers as well, bringing manufacturers in as young as elementary school ages to give exposure to manufacturing technologies. Dylan from our team is on as well, who runs Rust Belt Robotics. That's a part of the FIRST Robotics program. And I know they have quite a bit of sponsorship here locally from companies as well. So, and then Northland Workforce, obviously, that's right next door to us, that's partnering. I know there's a couple of large manufacturers locally, but also some of their new automotive programs between Northtown and West Her, where you have sort of dual initiative, where they sort of put the boundary between them aside for the greater good of developing a talent pool that can actually go right out into the workforce.
So I'm curious if there are manufacturers interested in getting involved with any of these initiatives, what would you recommend as the best steps?
Well, maybe I could weigh in here. I'd piggyback again on something Dan said about Northland. They've got some specific capabilities and flexibilities that really lend themselves to manufacturers who are looking to get involved. Let me give you an example. There are a number of manufacturers who are struggling to find these famous CNC operators we keep talking about. And they approached Northland about that. Northland already had a program, but they wanted something that would be faster and that wouldn't necessarily be as deep, but would give them people they could hire in and begin to work with. And so working together, using those manufacturers as a focus group, Northland was able to elicit some of the key aspects of what that training needed to include and put together a very short term, I think it's a 2-month certificate program that would allow somebody to go from a standing start to a hireable starting machinist who the companies could then begin to train and bring online. So there's a lot of flexibility there, especially when it comes to working with incumbent workers who you may want to upskill in your operation.
I just
So it
wanted to
sounds
add
like
to, sorry,
go ahead,
Say Yes Buffalo has an apprenticeship program as well that I just wanted to kind of shout out because they've partnered with a lot of, manufacturing companies and direct companies where they're trying to upskill these students from the get-go, right? And so if you can have that type of partnership and talk about the skill set that's really needed for your specific area, that's another area to look at.
So it sounds like it's helpful to think about what is it that you need out of, if it's an apprenticeship program or even for recruitment, what is the candidate you need? What is the set of experience or training you need? And then I'm hearing everything from a custom program to existing programs that you can just plug right into. So that's exciting. I'm curious too, even on the candidate recruitment side of things. Do you find that there are certain groups you would go to? Perhaps it's not when it's not paired with the training, whether that's recruiters or universities. How is that environment? And I'm particularly curious if you're aware that companies or programs have specific institutions that they already have a relationship with, and they know that there's sort of this pipeline of students coming. Particularly on that higher ed side, we haven't talked too much about that. A lot of these have been sort of certificate based, not necessarily degree based.
Yeah, I think we have good relationships internally here locally between UB, RIT, are sort of programs that we work pretty closely with. And then obviously at our Columbus office, one of our bigger feeders is Ohio State and the Weld Engineering program over there. I think one of the things that manufacturers can do to get early access to potentially really high quality engineers is getting involved in co-op programs like what RIT has, and I know Northeastern has one. I believe there's one at the University of North Carolina where we actually participated in that one last summer. So I think that's a really good way to get engineers in early before they've graduated and sort of get them in on a trial basis for both yourselves and for them to see if it's a good fit. So I think programs like that can be really good, and I think those are pretty well published. Who has those programs available? But that's one that we've internally found pretty helpful and pretty rewarding, and we've hired out of those programs before.
Great. I'm sure that's really helpful. We appreciate that the companies are all very busy with their heads down doing their business, but those relationships are key, co-ops and such. Certainly open to more questions if audience wants to put anything in the chat. And while we're thinking about that, I do want to make sure we cover sort of the measurement side of this. So what kind of metrics would you actually recommend that companies use both for their incumbent workforce and how they're doing relative to retaining and upskilling that pool, as well as metrics around the recruitment of the new talent? We'll have a comment on that, and then I've got a couple questions that we'll cover from the chat, and I'll get to you, Danielle, as well.
We see companies looking at a lot of traditional measures. These aren't exactly groundbreaking, but what's their average duration of an open position? How long is it taking them to fill that? What's the trend? What does retention look like? How often are things turning over? And we're encouraging them to be more thoughtful and systematic about exit interviews to try and understand what may be triggering departures so that they can make adjustments accordingly. So none of that's earth shattering, but it's the kind of blocking and tackling that can be very helpful.
Any changes you're seeing in that relative to Gen Z?
No, nothing that I could attribute
Not
strictly.
yet, right? Until AI gives us some new ones. Akua?
Yeah, I'll build on that because I think a lot of folks are starting to look beyond turnover, right? So to Ben's point, those exit interviews, but doing stay interviews as well within the first 6 to 12 months. And I think the other piece that I would look at is like tracking engagement by tenure across the organization. But what does internal mobility look like? How long does it take someone to be promoted? We often look at promotion equity. You know, how long is it taking someone to get that promotion? But then what does that look like across specific roles in an organization? How about manager effectiveness as well? You know, oftentimes when there's an issue in a company and you start to kind of look into these metrics and seeing where that's coming from, you can start to pinpoint a little bit more to say, hey, maybe it is a specific manager, and we need to upskill the manager to make sure that there's better retention in that area. So I would say look beyond turnover and start earlier in that process to make sure that you understand why people are staying, because you know that's maybe a part of the culture that you can then emulate further as well.
Great. John, I see you've got your hand up. You want to jump in?
Yeah, just a couple things. Is everybody has to keep in mind most of these training programs, whether they're a 12-week, a 1-year, or a 2-year, I hate to say this, but you're not going to get a machinist. You're going to have an operator that has varying skills. With that being said, our 1-year and 2-year programs here at Northland for CNC, again, I saw somebody else mention that their program is the least attended. Ours is as well. I think a lot of people are trying to help rebrand that to help with that, and that's helping. But to keep in mind, the manufacturers couldn't wait 1 year or 2 year. They're looking for quicker turnaround. So we started a 12-week program. And a 12-week is no more than orientation. This is a lathe, this is a mill, and these are the metrology tools you're going to need, and this is a blueprint. But we're trying to make that lift easier for local manufacturers that are hiring. You don't have to teach them what a micrometer is and what a caliper is. If I am hiring, I've been in manufacturing 44 years, and I have somebody coming out of a 12-week program, I'm not going to have them running my $500,000 or my $1 million machine. They're going to be working directly with somebody, but we need to make that lift easier and faster for them to get them upskilled. And it's really the same with the 1 year and 2-year programs as well, other than they're a little farther along. They're going to be using the metrology a little bit more. They're going to be using the machines a little bit more. They're going to know what offsets are a little bit more. So everybody needs to keep that in mind when we're going any program. And I don't care if it's Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, or Los Angeles. Any one of these short programs, the local manufacturers really need to be directly involved with whoever that entity is of what they want. And then we can do that. But keep in mind, it's only 12 weeks or 1 year or 2 year. So as long as everybody's on that same page, the system will work well. But we're turning, I think we're up to 400 and some students a year now. Not just CNC, but over several different entities. So we're trying to expand that and trying to expand Northland in different areas. So, but that was my 2 cents.
You're a great representative. So it sounds like communications and realistic expectations are 2 key things. Danielle.
Yeah, and it's building off a little bit of the question in the chat, around having additional programming. And I think, John, to your point, this is a more longer term vision question. Is there a marketing problem? Are manufacturers talking about the right thing? So to get people interested in these jobs to actually upskill them. I always joke that if 15 years ago, had someone said to me, like, by the time you walk off the factory floor, like, no one can find you. Like, you're not going to be answering emails at 9 o'clock at night or on the weekend, and you're going to have a really steady income. I think it would have been a realistic opportunity for me that I would have looked at it. And I don't think sometimes, is there a marketing issue of how we're presenting the opportunities that could reduce students not graduating with a job or graduating without any degree and having student loans. And so yeah, curious people's opinions on that. I guess, and this is the top of the funnel, longer term solution types issues.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad that was brought up, that it still is an issue as being seen as an attractive area, and people are concerned about, not clean environments and all kinds of things. And as soon as I went to Buffalo Manufacturing Works and started looking at all the robotic equipment, I thought, well, this is like a gamer's dream come true. This is really awesome, but who knows about this? So would love to hear some more comments on what really is a top of funnel and perception issue.
I think you just hit the nail on the head, Marnie. Even though you've got all this cool stuff on most manufacturing floors, it's not, your grandfather's assembly line anymore. It's not dark, dirty, and dangerous. In fact, the majority of R&D that happens in this country happens in manufacturing companies. So, there's a lot of high-end stuff out there, but the perception doesn't always match the reality. And I think programs like Dream It, Do It are excellent examples that you have to get into that process very early. That, kids are making decisions about where they're going to go to college, what they're going to study, even in high school. Am I going to take the academic program? Am I going to take, a BOCES route? And if you can help them understand the opportunities that await them from a career perspective in terms of manufacturing, that can sway them in terms of some of those decisions. And you may find that you've got more of a worker pool in a couple of years when more folks have gone that technical path. So I think, for manufacturers, it means supporting efforts like Dream It, Do It, opening up their shops for tours to help kids who could be potential future workers understand the real opportunities in manufacturing.
Jess, I see you're hopping off, so we're going to go ahead and talk about your question. So you'll have to listen to the recording to follow up. But thanks for joining. So before we go to Jess's question, though, John, I see you have your hand up for this one.
No, I can wait if somebody needs.
You know
to
what?
get
I
off,
think
if they
she
wanna-
had to hop off for another meeting, so we'll cover hers right after.
All right. No, it's one of the things we're doing here at Northland is just that we're trying to help rebrand our welding classes, our electrical classes. They're booked, and we're on a wait list for next fall already for those. And we have a hard time trying to get students in. I mean, there's 60 and 80 students in those. We're having a hard time getting 20 for the CNC. So we partnered with a video company, and they made 2.5 minute videos that we're starting to show, and it's helped our outreach. We've started filling at least one cohort here with the help of that. Everybody knows what an electrician is. Everybody knows what a welder is. Nobody knows what's CNC, what's a machine tool, what is manufacturing. So we're trying to help rebrand that a little bit, as well as having like lunch and learns for parents, guidance counselors, politicians, anybody that would like to come. We try to do it at a dinner hour to try and entice them to come in. We try to do it at a lunch hour to try and come in, just to help promote and what is CNC, trying to help rebrand it, because that is one of the biggest strifes. Nobody knows what it is. And if you told me that I could come out of here making $45,000 or $50,000 starting wage with no student loan, sign me up. And that's what we're trying to promote a little bit. So
it sounds like you have a nice social media post right there.
Yeah.
We'll take
I'd
it
pay you
recording.
60, John, right now.
So let's maybe finish up with Jess's question here. So, I think it gets to sort of the diversity of who's coming through the door. We want to appeal to more diverse candidates coming in, but bringing up the question of many non-English speaking new immigrants who, in fact, are looking at manufacturing. They're hungry for roles like that. But how does the culture impact the intergenerational norms and expectations for that team collaboration that you've all said is so important?
Yeah, I would say it's certainly a challenge in some of those environments. I'm aware of companies that have, told me they've got 3, 4, 10 languages that are being spoken on their shop floor, because they've tapped into that immigrant community in the area. But what I also invariably hear is they love those soft skills, that the work ethic, the reliability that they get with those workers, and they've found workarounds for some of the communication issues. Now, that's only one small aspect of the culture, and obviously, it's a challenge if all the workers can't speak to all the other workers. But again, I would encourage companies to think about how they can be creative in enabling some of that for their own operations.
Yeah, you remind me of one of our startup companies we funded who has a translation app, if you will. So clearly, communications is critical, regardless of kind of what specific scenario is. Akua, some thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so especially that intergenerational component too, it really makes me think about unspoken expectations and how, we need to address those at the beginning, right? And so investing in ultimately a shared language, what that looks like. Now that's difficult when you have different languages, but there are partners that folks have utilized like ViVE, International Institute, to really support some of the language barriers as well. But I think making sure that everyone is understanding how each person contributes is definitely something that you should do at the beginning, and just setting the tone for that across the organization.
Great. Dan?
Yeah, I think this is one where we see it's really helpful to look internal to your organization for both cultural and also promotion opportunities. Because if you can build out a leadership team in sort of high volume sort of immigrant communities within manufacturing, I think we've seen a lot of success where a member of that community will sort of work up into a leadership position, and then sort of be able to build the culture from top down instead of bottom up. And I think that has really helped some of those organizations. It also has increased their access to pools of referrals. One of the things I was going to mention before, as far as job retention or things we want to look at from a successful campaigning for new pools of workforce, is going to be those referrals. It's not really something that we track formally, but like, are our people happy enough that they're going to refer other people to work for us, right? And a lot of times you're going to find really good people from those, because if you have a good person referring to another good person, you're going to be able to build that way. So I think building around those communities, I think can also be helpful, where I think you find, to Ben's point, once you find really good qualities, use that pool of talent that you've brought in to breed more talent.
Thank you. John, any last comment before I wrap with the panel? Oh, you're on mute.
Uh-oh.
Sorry. English is a second language. We're actually running into issues that in the training portion of that with some of the new Americans. So we're starting to we're trying to work on right now partnering with somebody that can teach English as a second language. Also, some of the younger candidates have never had driver's licenses before. Yes, they're coming to school. They're learning talents. They get a job, but they don't have transportation. So we just started our first cohort of driver's ed. And so it's you kind of have to think outside the box to try and get, because there's a lot of talent out there. They don't even know they have the talent. Those are the people we need to attract. And we got to take all the barriers away. So anything manufacturers can do to help with that, any education facility will listen to you wholeheartedly, or should.
Well, we sure appreciate the conversation today. I think we're hearing a lot of the same themes, which is you really have to take a comprehensive view. What are the needs? What will attract people to this sector? And then what are the needs of the people who start taking a look, and how do you draw them in? And then the communications. So a question we didn't get to, but certainly speaks to leadership and management in manufacturing entities being able to tap into all of these issues to make sure that you have the most success possible. So I really want to thank the panel today, Ben, Akua, and Dan, really terrific. I know you're all open to hearing from folks as well. So we will certainly make sure to make this recording available to all the registrants from today. But we're hoping we can spread the word, and we will look forward to future webinars and chances to gather folks to talk about this really important issue and topic for a community that has great opportunities in our AI-enabled world. So thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.